All right, now ChuckChat News and Notes. This is going to be April 1st. This is a little bit delayed from my normal Monday release schedule since I had the loop content, the reinforcement loop content coming out. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with too many things all at once, but that means that I've got a queue of news that I'm going to have to get through, and there's a lot of stuff that's been happening. So this will be one where we get to go at pace and try to get through it as quickly as we can without dropping any of the signal for noise. So lots of focus hopefully in this one. Well, one of the most exciting ones for me personally was the Dallas area. We just had a conference and they named the AI 75. So various different leaders who are having an impact in AI here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I was named to that list in the visionary category. So it was a great honor. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody at the conference. It was a great collection of so many brilliant minds, and being on the stage there with so many of those bright people was really an honor. Well, the first bit of this news is there's several big players in the AI space, and all of them did something, some positive, some less positive, and so I tried to gather as many of these different pieces, although some of them will fall into multiple different categories as well. We're going to start out with some of the bad news, and the bad news is really for Microsoft. They've had some struggles. Copilot is one where it is just not hitting the mark the way that they would like it to. If you look at the actual number of users, 450 million Microsoft 365 users, and only 15 million paid Copilot users. That is not a very high number. And then seeing the net promoter score go down as dramatically as it is already minus 3.5, but minus 24.1 within here in the very short period of time. That means that people don't trust it. They're not feeling good about what the answers are. Microsoft has been making a number of different moves trying to improve in this, but once you start to lose your customers' trust, this is a loop-based thing where if you've got a bad answer, derivatives of that answer are also likely to be bad. You're not going to trust it, and you're not going to want to go back. Following on with that, Microsoft lost money. Well, they didn't lose money. They had one of their worst orders since 2008. And a lot of it has to do with people are looking for what's the revenue. You got a lot of investments in AI, you got a lot of these things going on. When are things going to go through? Combine that with the net promoter score collapse and other things. It's a bit of a conundrum for them. I wouldn't count them out. Microsoft has a large number of very smart people, and they are looking in the AI space to be a founder. They have access to the OpenAI tech and information, as they've talked about fairly regularly. So I wouldn't count them out yet, but I would watch to see what they're going to do. OpenAI, meanwhile, they've announced their no more side quests. So they've done a lot of different things. They've been all over the map, whether it was Sora or whether it was some of the other different products that they've been chasing with a potential adult chatbot as one of the ideas that they floated out there. Well, they've decided they're going to focus. They're focusing on corporate. They're focusing on coding. They're focusing on the things that are going to make it much more of a grown-up company, I guess is the way that they're putting it. They canceled Sora. They've rolled it back. They're bringing it all down, which actually at this point, that before any money exchanged hands with the Disney agreement, it's done. SoftBank has secured another 40 billion loan in order to continue the growth and the investment and expansion, and they're really wanting to try and focus and see more in the corporate world and more serious pieces, not just some of the growth by any means. Well, meanwhile, they've also got Spud coming, which is part of their newest model, and it's forecasted to be really good. Of course, the leaks are on top of it, and everybody's talking about how it will make a difference in the economy. Is the way that Sam had put it. But they, along with these changes, they've made some restructuring changes. A lot of this is to prep for the IPO, which is expected to come later on this year. But even in the meantime, they've raised another $122 billion and are currently at a $852 billion valuation. So it's not just a new model, it's a different way to operate. I think there's going to be a number of things to watch. I think we're seeing this coming out of all the research labs where they're not a research lab anymore. These are big corporations. They're starting to have to behave like them. Meanwhile, Anthropic has been shipping over the course of this last week. They shipped so many things in the month of March. I pulled some of that data together to try and get as complete a list as possible. And on the next slide, I've got a breakdown of some of the different things. But remote control, co-work dispatch, the ability to control from your phone, the ability to use your computer, even use your computer when you're away with your phone. So many different features that have come out, one after the next, after the next, after the next. Just an amazing flurry of content. I think they want to strike while the iron is hot. They've got a lot of people's mindsets. Even at the conference that I was at, everybody was talking about Claude and Copilot as their favorite tool. It's a one that's big and growing. The million context window is also a big one, which actually, from everything that I've played with so far, it actually is very strong even there. Even though they warn if it gets above 200,000, it could go down, but it's still one of the best that's out there and better than many of the others. They've even added free memory and containers to the free tier of people trying to take advantage of some of the grabs that they've had. So this list kind of gives you the quick breakdown of the features here since late February. They've just been one after another after another. You can see that cluster of features there in March and towards the end of March. Lots and lots of things shipping and shipping quick. They also accidentally shipped their own source code. So that was late breaking news just this week, but they've quickly patched and rolled that out. But once it's out, the damage is done. Someone was able to pull that from the deployments, and they were able to see the TypeScript really for Claude code. So while this doesn't mean that the model weights and the other pieces are out, so the proprietary things that really make the knowledge behind it, it means the agents and how the agents work and what the parallelization is and what the different tools, a number of those different things were exposed. And so people are, of course, swarming. There's multiple different versions of this. I'm sure Anthropic is going to be enforcing copyright as fast and as hard as they possibly can on any of those different things. I know someone has already created a Python fork from this. So they've rewritten the things in a different language, trying to get around that as a potential thing. But what this to me is really important, and this is sort of part of the OpenClaw effect, and really where we're seeing some of the value for all of these models start to dial in, is it's not just the models, it's the systems around the models, and it's the orchestration of usage of those models. That's really been what Claude Code has been fantastic with, and what Claude Co-work has been all about, and being able to accelerate that. And other, I would expect to see some of the features that they had locked down and start to show up in competitors, and I'm sure it'll be a coincidence. I would also be sensitive to there's potential exploits once people understand how they work. So I'm sure they're going to be making changes. I'm sure it's going to look different very quickly, but that's something to watch out for, certainly in the near term. On to the architecture of winning. We've got space and little clawed robots running around. And all kinds of things that are going quick here. So this from NVIDIA and Jensen, one of the things that he talked about at their big conference was how I talked about it last time, that they've released OpenClaw, a NemoClaw version or a fork of OpenClaw. And they're saying you got to have an OpenClaw strategy. And I don't know that really you need to have an OpenClaw strategy, but you definitely need to have some form of agentic and coordination and orchestration strategy. If you don't, you're definitely in trouble. How you're going to manage workflows. I think the workflows, and I talked about this in the reinforcement loop. I think workflows within work are going to actually start to self-improve. If you don't have a way to be able to get there, if you're not planning for that and you're starting to put those pieces in play, you are going to fall behind. They used their blueprint to be able to do it, and they even are looking, of course, to run it on NVIDIA hardware and run that fast on some of the boxes. You can run even the open source models with it to make it go fast, learn, adapt, and go quickly. They're really pushing for that continued infrastructure layer, and I think that you're going to see winners coming out of that. That's why they're pushing for inference. That's why they're pushing for many other different areas. Meanwhile, you've got Elon and team who are working with end to end. They're looking with the things that they're trying to do. It's all the way from silicon to orbit. If you're familiar at all with their super factory that's down in Austin, it actually they take in sand and out comes cars on the other end. It's a little bit dramatic, but it's pretty close. They're trying to cut out as many other things as possible, and they're trying to take that same ecosystem all the way through for all the other pieces as well. And so shift from just it being about the model to shift to it being all the different things. This is part of the reason why Google has had a lot of fans in terms of their structure, because they've got chips, they've got learning, they've got distribution, they've got the ability to do many other different things. And so meanwhile, what Elon's pushing to do is to hit space and get that Dyson swarm going. I think you're going to see some competitive differentiation, and that's one of the ones that who's going to win. I think is partly going to be who controls how much of what the actual eventual stack becomes. And so then we got some signals from the frontier, some encouraging things for humans, with us getting a score of 100 and robots 0. And then we've also got some things around learning and how they're learning and what we're seeing in different models that are coming out. So before that, though, OpenAI is not the only one teasing a new model. The Mythos leak was a press release that was ready to go on Anthropic's site, and somebody picked it up and was able to see it, and then it was gone. They pulled it down very quickly, but it's got everybody talking about Mythos and what it could do. And part of what they're warning of that model is it has really advanced capabilities. It's very expensive. It's going to be very expensive. But it's very good in cybersecurity, cyber risk, being able to both find them and patch them. So they want to be able to actually, what they're talking about is giving preview or early access to those who are defending versus the general purpose. But this sort of step change in capability is one that we want to continue to watch, because it changes the risk surface. How they gauge them, very similar to what the risk is from a weather and from a biological event and those sorts of things. And we're getting higher and higher in those levels to where it really is something that we've got to figure out what the right things to do and how to be able to legislate around it too. Meanwhile, there was a couple of different pieces that I thought were very interesting, especially when you combine them together. So we've got the CACM blog released one around model collapse, and really what that's about is if you have systems that are training on data, and this is it's a very common talk track right now, is around how AI in the reinforcement loop and learning, and it's learning from itself and it's going faster. It's starting to do its own research and doing all those things. But if you're training on the same data, what you're really have run the real risk of doing is to flattening it out. So rather than that beautiful spikes that we have as humanity and in our knowledge, where there's some that are high and some that are low, you're kind of averaging it all out to the bottom, which is a problem. It was very early on in the diffusion models. This was one where you could see if you train images on images that were generated with it, then they start to get blander and worse, not the same high level of quality. So it's a good visual representation to be able to think about that. But there's been different ways around it. It is something to continue to watch. Meanwhile, at the same time, this blog from Intercom around what they have released is a model where it runs cheaper, it runs faster. They've trained it their own data. And what they've done is a fine tune of one of the open source models with data that they have, which is last mile actual utilization data. So having that data all the way down as far as you possibly can get it, that's really still viewed to be a competitive differentiator. And that's something that I think we're going to see more of. We're going to see other companies try to figure out, where do you need to use one of the major models? Where do you not use the major model? And what does that actually mean? Where can you get your competitive differentiation on data that it is that you have? If data is the new oil, this only makes sense. Meanwhile, this one is very exciting. It's exciting to me anyway. So the ARC Prize people have released the ARC AGI 3. So they've done two different versions of the AGI test. And if you are interested in feeling like you're not as smart as you think you are, check out one of the earlier ones, and you can ask any of the models, what's a ARC AGI 1? Give me an example set of ARC AGI 1 or ARC AGI 2 test questions, and see how many of them that you know, and you'll feel bad. But It is those tests were built around testing knowledge. They're impressive capabilities there, and we've saturated those tests with these models. They know that stuff, and they've learned it. They've learned the capabilities, but learning is different than adapting, and that's really what this next test is about. So AGI 3 is something which humans are scoring 100% on. Given a little bit of time and being able to go through, figure out the puzzles, you got to move something, you got to do something else beforehand, and the models are at zero, like gloriously at zero. For example, I believe one of the OpenAI models tested, and it cost $5,000 worth of tokens and got just above 0% in completion. So it's an interesting thing to watch. What this is, I think, going to give us and why it's really meaningful is being able to test, can it learn and can it adapt. So knowledge is one thing, the ability to apply other knowledge, connect different things. And this is one of the things that people have talked about for a while, is how can it imagine? Can it bring around new things? Can it connect new items? This clearly proves that is currently a gap, and I would recommend go out, check it out, check out the actual ARC prize pieces. You can play some of these different ones and see how you as a human can get it. And sometimes you look at it and you're like, well, now that you figured it out, it's obvious. How could one of these AIs not get it? You'll feel vastly superior, at least for a little while, until they start to improve those scores. All right, so more coming in the big news with both humans adapting to what's going on and IPOs, the SpaceX IPO, and still security starting to evolve. So this one I thought was interesting, where we've got humans adapting faster than their organizations. People are starting to do micro shifting, where though, and this only makes sense when you consider the world of AI, where you fire off a bunch of stuff, you get your agents going, and then you wander off for a while and you go take the dog for a walk, and then you come back and you see whether all your stuff is done. So people are starting to do this, and it's not that they're trying to short the system, but they're being conscious about work-life balance as a way to be able to enact both work and quality and value, but at the same time life and quality and value. So I think it's an interesting thing to watch. It'll be I think educative if we see how this rolls, as we see how this rolls and how this evolves. Meanwhile, the markets are crazy and people are crazy. So we're pricing on stories. So there, one of the big stories is SpaceX is going to go public. They've got a roll up together with the pieces that I was talking before around bringing all those things together end to end to be able to start to create a Dyson cloud, a Dyson swarm up in space, and get computers up there. And Musk and co are really chasing after that. And people are in a frenzy about being able to take part of this. It's expected to be $1 trillion IPO. There's competition about who's going to get to be able to actually do it and run it, and what will be the end consumer ones, and where will it be available, and all of this, the things along those lines. Even down to the point where people are betting in some of the different markets around what will the name of the ticker be, how fast will it go. I mean, it's a bit crazy. This is the world we live in, where the narrative loop is defined by social media as much as it is anything else. But the fundamentals have not changed. If you believe what they're going to be able to do, and you think they're going to be able to get to the moon, they're going to be able to do some of those items, that they'll be able to build a Dyson swarm, then this is probably a very good investment. If you have questions, or if you don't, then maybe it's not something that you want to see. Well, as a repercussion from some of that, as the things are moving along, the last of the founders other than Musk from XAI have left. So there was 11 of them originally, and the last one here left at the very end of March. This doesn't necessarily mean that the end is nigh or all things are bad, but it does point, rarely is it a neutral event when founders leave. And so it indicates, I think, a shift from research into execution, to being much more serious around what that is that they're trying to do, and how it's going to get delivered, and what the expectations actually are. And not that it wasn't hot and heavy and hard before, but it's definitely going to be kicked up a notch as they try to bring some of these other pieces together, and without part of that merge. I think it also ties a lot to the consolidation of control as you look around Tesla and SpaceX and then all X, and then XAI, and how all that's happening and where it's going to go. I think that that ecosystem of alignment has something to do with the strategy and what the impacts are actually going to be. And then this is just one of many, but Palo Alto is one that's very well known. I saw a number of other different companies. Actually, there's a number of startups in this space about how do you secure the agentic world. We're now starting to secure decisions. How we're now starting to secure the memory, the ecosystems around how agents are going to play with one another. And this, I think, also is very important for enterprises, for scale, as we start to take these things from it being an answer system into an action system. It's going to be important that we have all of these things put in place. Last but not least, or in the continuance of things, we've got the government, we've got lawsuits, we've got other fun things that are going along. This, I think, is going to have more ramifications than people are necessarily even realizing. So the loops around reinforcement pieces, which were used with Meta and Google, two different major lawsuits that went down hundreds of millions of dollars, and basically saying that they used these algorithms and took advantage of teens, and they created addiction behaviors and those sorts of items. Now, both are on record as they're going to appeal these decisions. They believe that they were wrong, and etc. But it does mean that the legal frameworks are paying attention to these. It also points to public view around some of these things. I stopped this one capture right on purpose where it is on the beginning of the tides turning on big tech. I think it's very telling to think about what that thing is. And when you think about how some of these different reinforcement and usage loops go within AI, it's a very similar sort of thing. It's built to continue that conversation. I joke, mostly joke, that I've turned one of my bots, and I have a whole series of different ones, but I've turned one of them into a personality of a YouTuber because it always finishes with something like, would you like the 3 keys to being able to know more about blah, 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 whatever I just asked? And about half the time I'm like, yeah, I would. But it's an interesting dynamic to actually see some of those things just manifest so directly. Meanwhile, the government continues. The Washington has released a follow-up to the earlier guidance pieces with more details. This Holland and Knight write-up I thought was a really good one around. It's actually a pretty simple document. What was released. It doesn't actually mean that the laws themselves are specifically changing. It just means that the guidance for those. But it does portend a lot of what it is that we're going to see from the government and where leanings are going to be. So it is something worth paying attention to in terms of how things are moving and rolling. And meanwhile, Anthropic won one of their 2 legal battles around being blocked by the Department of Defense or the Department of War, and I think it's important to note that even if they win each of these different lawsuits and they have to take the injunction down, they get the case that they've had put on them about being a supply chain risk, which I think, as I commented before, I think that they've got some good legs on this in terms of being able to win them. Doesn't mean that the government has to use them as a software product, and I think we're going to continue to see things along these lines where it's partly to be able to bring that conversation forward. Partly we have to take some action and have a position on it, and we really do need the government to take action as well. And well, that is it for April 1st. No April Fool's news in this particular one, but hopefully this was useful. If you thought it was good, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe if you have not already, and hit the bell if you want to get alerts about when I'm talking about all these crazy things again next time.